Hello everyone and welcome back to This Week in Mythic Plus. Now this week we have Bolstering, Skittish, and Fortified. So before we jump into exactly what to do to counter this, let's just talk about what these affixes really do. So the first one is Bolstering. When an enemy dies, all the surrounding enemies that are also in combat are going to get a damage and HP bump. Skittish is going to make tanks do 75% less threat, and Fortified makes any non-boss enemies, so trash, do more damage and have more HP. So what this week really boils down to is difficult trash that needs to be AoE'd and cleaved down at the same time, not staggered at all, and tanks need to be on their game to hold threat. So again, as a group, you need to be coordinated in your efforts to take down any group. Even if it's a group with non-elites and elites, your damage needs to be as even as possible so that everything goes down at the same time. The more you stagger your kills, the harder of a time you're going to have this week. One other thing to note is that this week is going to be particularly difficult on tanks just because most of these mechanics fall back on the tank. If you stagger your kills and trigger bolstering a lot, your tank is going to be taking insane amounts of damage, and Skittish is a tank focused affix where your tank is going to need to generate a lot more threat and do a lot more damage, sacrificing a little bit of survivability along the way. And Fortified applies mostly to the tank as long as he holds aggro. So tanks, this week you might need to respec or pick up a few more talent points that are more focused on damage as opposed to survivability, and this is so that you can do more AoE damage and cleave damage to spike up your threat to counter Skittish. You should be using DPS cooldowns at the beginning of every pull if they're available so that you generate more threat, and keep your stuns handy for when your targets get bolstering or if they start jumping to other people. So once the group starts getting low and bolstering starts triggering or you lose a little bit of threat, that's when you want to use your stun. DPS. This week falls on you more than on anyone else. You need to do uniform AoE and cleave damage as much as you can. Now I understand that not every move is an AoE or a cleave ability, so you also are going to need to tab target and rotate who you're focusing on to bring everyone down as closely as possible. You also need to keep your stun handy just in case the target has way too many stacks of bolstering, or if the mob decides to jump targets from the tank to one of the DPSers. Also, in the beginning of every pull, please wait 2 or 3 global cooldowns before you go in 100% and go completely crazy. This allows your tank a little bit of breathing room to counter Skittish. Healers, you should be aware that with any pull, the closer to the end you get, the more healing that the tank is going to require, and this has to do with bolstering triggering and actually getting a few hits off on that. So your healing should increase over time of any pull. You should also be helping with any stuns or snares that are needed if a target has way too many stacks of bolstering or if threat starts bouncing around between the group. Also, you should be saving your big instant heals for any type of threat bouncing. So if threat bounces to one of your DPSers, even if it's just for 1 or 2 seconds, that can mean up to 80% of the HP lost. So please keep those handy and ready to use on anyone that's not the tank. Overall, this week really can vary. If you treat the affixes right and actually AoE and cleave things down the way that they should go down at the same time, then this week is going to be about a 4 out of 10. But if your group is not very coordinated and things start going down left and right at very different intervals, then this week can spike up to a 7 out of 10. So be very careful. This week is a lot more heavy on trash than anything else, just because all 3 affixes are going to be affecting the trash, and the only affix affecting bosses is going to be Skittish, so it's a lot less to worry about. This means that dungeons that mix non-elites and elites at the same time is going to be a lot more deadly to you, because those non-elites are going to go down a lot faster, triggering bolstering for the elite mobs. So if you are doing one of those dungeons, think something like Lower Kara or EOA that have the possibility of these pulls. Be very careful with what you pull and try not to mix elites and non-elites. But you should definitely get out there, do at least your plus 10 for the week, get your artifact power for the week, and get your weekly chest all settled. And as always, good luck out there.